I'm Devon Raming, and you're watching KHOU 11+. Today, we're learning just how far we've come in developing treatment and prevention options for HIV. And while there's no cure for HIV, I found out how modern medicine is making life a little easier for those directly impacted. Take a look. The science behind treating and preventing the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, has come a long way since the onset of the HIV epidemic back in 1981.
It's a little easier.
Nearly 45 years later, long gone are the days of taking multiple pills a day, as science has made it possible to treat HIV with just one pill a day, or in some cases, a new injectable option every 6 months, keeping the virus suppressed, helping people living with the virus achieve and maintain the coveted status of undetectable, according to family nurse practitioner and HIV expert Kendrick Clack.
And we know that when we get people who are living with HIV to what we call a viral load that is not detectable, then we also know that HIV transmission is not possible.
The drug, Lenacapavir, is one of the latest injectable treatments taken every 6 months to currently treat HIV, and as of December, was proven to work as a form of prevention known as pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, according to Houston doctor and HIV researcher Dr. Gordon Crowfoot.
I'm really honored to say that I gave the first injection of Lenacapavir to a human in the world. And now it's becoming this fabulous drug that's being used for treatment and soon will be approved by the FDA for PrEP.
It gives people the autonomy over their body.
Ian Haddock, founder of the Normal Anomaly Initiative, was part of the most recent Lenacapavir as PrEP study.
To know that this injection lasted over 6 months while I was engaging in dating, engaging in, intercourse, and just being a black man, a queer man, is really a powerful new tool in our prevention toolbox.
A move helping fight stigma and empowering people like Jordan Edwards.
I have been positive since 2013.
To lead normal lives.
It used to be scary to talk about my status and talk about that I'm living with HIV. So there's more conversation around what type of pleasure do we want to have? What types of things do we want to do? Not just so focused around my HIV status being a factor in that.
And while advancements in medicine are changing the game,
science is working in white gay male communities. The science is working. It is reducing HIV in those communities.
For Haddock, there's still work to be done on the access front and communities most vulnerable to the disease.
Education, criminal background, where you live, access to transportation, all of these things give you a predisposition to contract HIV and other health disparities.
PrEP is currently available in pill form as well as an injectable form every 2 months. Meanwhile, doctors expect the Lenacapavir for PrEP to be approved by the FDA in the next 1 to 3 months. In Houston, Devon Raming, KHOU 11 News. And joining me now to discuss this topic further is Dr. Gordon Crowfoot with the Crowfoot Medical Clinic and Research Center. Dr. Crowfoot, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us to lend us your expertise on such a very important matter and topic for millions of people.
Well, this is a really, really important topic, and thank you for inviting me. I don't do many TV shows anymore. I'm getting a little older, but this is such an important topic, and what we're finding out is so important. PrEP first came out in 2012 with Truvada. We've got 12 years of PrEP. Still not being used enough. It's not 100% effective yet. We're going to talk about that because things are changing based on some amazing studies with a new drug. Yeah. But first, why are we doing this? Why are we here? Yeah. Why do we need PrEP? What's going on in the world? Condoms. In the 80s, everyone said, use your condom, use your condom, use your condom. I'm sorry, condoms are only 70% effective in preventing HIV transmission. In heterosexuals, it's 80% effective, and men having sex with men, it's only 70% effective. And if we look at numbers from 2022, those are the most recent statistics that we have. They're shocking. I can't even get my mind around some of these things. The young, the youth, we need to target the youth. Age 13 to 34 are 56% of all new HIV infections. Black men are 39% of all HIV infections. And a black man having sex with men, 1 out of 3 men will in their lifetime get HIV. I can't even imagine that 1 of every 3 black men will get HIV in their lifetime if we don't do something to prevent that.
Yeah, Dr. Crowford, let me ask you this. For starters, when we talk about HIV, what exactly is HIV?
HIV is a virus that we first learned about in 1983 when we learned it was a virus from Dr. Luc Montagnier at the Louis Pasteur Institute in Paris. This is a virus that gets into the body, and it's a really sneaky virus because it gets in and it attacks certain cells that have an appropriate receptor on their surface, and the virus has a receptor called the GP120. It comes up and it attaches to a human cell, very often white blood cells and T helper lymphocytes. And when it attaches, it opens a hole in the cell that it connects to. It injects what we call a capsid, and I'll explain how important that is in a minute. The capsid contains the genetic material for this virus. It's a single strand of RNA that's in this covering that's kind of a football shell covering that goes into the human white blood cell, and then the capsid covering breaks down and you have single-stranded RNA. That single-stranded RNA then has enzymes that come with it from the virus that turn it into single-stranded DNA, and then that single-stranded DNA becomes double-stranded DNA, and that double-stranded DNA looks exactly like the human double-stranded DNA in every one of your cells, every one of my cells. And then these little segments of double-stranded DNA go into the nucleus of the cell that it infects, opens up the human double-stranded DNA. How sneaky is that a virus can go in, cleave open your double-stranded DNA, insert itself in, and close it up. So you now have all of the genetic material from this virus that's no longer there. The virus isn't there any longer, but you have the genetic material to make virus from the cell that infected.
And this is a virus, we're talking, that impacts millions of people. This isn't just a gay thing or a white thing or a black thing. This is a virus that impacts millions of people around the world, regardless of sexual orientation.
Absolutely. In fact, initially in the US, it was men having sex with men, but worldwide, women were the most common transmitter of HIV infection, transmitting to men initially. And that's changed a little over the time period. But this is still a nasty virus. And when you infect a T helper cell or a white blood cell, and you've got the genetic material inside of that T helper cells, and most people with HIV know what a T helper lymphocyte is. It's part of their immune system. Most T helper lymphocytes have a half-life of 2 to 3 days. So these cells are constantly dying, and if you have the infection and you go in antiviral drugs now that stop your virus from replicating, those main T cells, they die and they're replaced by new ones that don't have the genetic material in the human cell. But unfortunately, we found out in 95, 96 that they're what we call reservoir cells, or what I call resting memory T cells that can get infected, and these T cells have a half-life of 85 years. So they don't die. You have cells inside of you that you were born with that aren't gone. So when these cells get infected, the genetic material's there basically forever. Now, we've sort of calculated, and I've told my patients, if they will stay on their antiviral drug and block the virus from replicating with very nice antiviral drugs that we have now that are very effective, that if you take your antiviral drugs for the next 365 years, you will be cured because these resting memory T cells will die off also, and you won't make any new ones. Most of my patients aren't cooperating with that recommendation, and I'm not sure I will either. I want to be around long enough to see this disease go away and we reach a cure. So that's what this virus does, and the problem is we can't get rid of the virus from these resting memory T cells that are infected. Dr. Tony Fauci spent a long time at the NIH trying to find a way to get rid of these resting memory T cells, and we haven't been effective in doing that. But we have very good treatment available now. We have lots of medicine. There are all these choices that anyone can find a regimen that they can take that will make your virus undetectable. And if you are undetectable, you are not contagious to someone else. 100% not contagious. That was an amazing thing that happened. And now we've just talked about two of the original goals. In the early days in the 80s, when this was such a terrible disease, I remember going to the hospital and rounding on 55 patients in the hospital sick with HIV, and probably one or two would die before I finished rounding on them that day.
Wow.
People were dying almost daily, every other day. I had two patients die at the same time, once in the hospital while I was doing a resuscitation on another one that was about to die. This was a terrible time that wasn't really being approached by government, science in those days. There was a lot of stigma, discrimination, and not much was being done. But it became very evident we needed to do a few things to get control with this disease and make it go away. We needed effective treatments. We've got that now. We have amazing medicines. We can get anyone undetectable and keep them undetectable.
And in addition to people reaching the undetectable status, there's now the advent of things like PrEP.
Yes.
And PrEP is now making it possible for someone who is negative to remain negative
Yes.
and not have the virus
Yes.
transmitted. Talk to us a little bit about PrEP, exactly.
So we've got that goal that we've now achieved of treating people so that they can live a normal life expectancy and they're not transmitting it to anyone else. But the next was PrEP. And PrEP first came out with Truvada, the first drug that we had studies on. And PrEP is an acronym for pre-exposure prophylaxis. So we're giving a medication to try to prevent someone from picking up the virus from someone who has viral activity and is contagious to them. And that's still happening a lot. We're getting about 31,000 new cases of HIV a year. 20 years ago it was 40,000. Okay, we've dropped it down to 30,000, but that's not enough. We need to drop it further. So Truvada came out as the first PrEP. You take Truvada, which was being used to treat people with HIV, and then shortly after that, Descovy, which is a new form of Truvada that decreases some of the side effects that came out. So now we have a one pill once a day to prevent transmission. And it was pretty effective if you took it every day, 92-95% effective. But the problem is people don't take one pill once a day very well.
Sure.
And most of the studies, people miss doses, they stop a week, they decide they don't want it for a week, their boyfriend's out of town, they stop it, forget to restart it. So most people don't take one pill once a day easily. And then we've got certain groups, unfortunately we still have drug users in our community. If you're out using crystal meth, you might not remember what you're doing every day and you're not going to take a pill. So that puts that group at higher risk of picking up HIV from someone else. They're sexually active, they're not being careful, and they forgot to take their pill for the last 2 weeks because they're using other recreational drugs. So Truvada came out, was a nice start to preventing transmission, but it wasn't perfect. And then we got Apretude, which is an injection. It's an intramuscular injection that's given every 2 months. Some people who have HIV infection might be aware of Cabenuva. Cabenuva is every 2 months a treatment for HIV infection, and that's 2 drugs. So we give 2 intramuscular injections, and that's been pretty effective as an option for treatment for people that don't want for their treatment to take a pill every day. Get a shot every 2 months.
Nice.
Now we've got one of those drugs, cabotegravir, which is given, it's called Apretude, and so that's 1 injection for PrEP. Pretty good results, and now we've got blood levels that are pretty good for 2 months before the blood level starts falling off to put you at risk of getting PrEP again. So that was
Getting
nice.
HIV again.
Or getting HIV again.
Sure.
Yeah, getting HIV.
Yeah.
So you know, it's another option. So now we're starting to get multiple options to prevent people from getting HIV. 1 pill once a day, Truvada, 1 pill once a day, Descovy, Apretude, an injection every 2 months. But now we get into this really amazing drug that I am so excited about called Lenacapavir. Lenacapavir is a subcutaneous injection. Potentially in the future, it possibly could be given at home. Apretude is an intramuscular injection that has to be given perfectly into the muscle. I don't recommend that anyone try giving that to themselves at home. You're going to get in trouble, and it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
If it goes into the fat, it's not going to work. It has to be in the muscle to work for 2 months. So Lenacapavir came out as a new treatment drug almost 7 years ago. I'm excited about Lenacapavir for treatment because it's an every 6-month injection. It needs to be combined with something else. You can't give Lenacapavir by itself. It has to be given with another 1 or 2 antiviral drugs to keep resistance from developing in someone who has a chronic HIV infection.
But are all of those extra drugs a part of the injection, or is it an injection and also pills?
And something else. And that was the problem. Here's this Gilead came out with this fabulous every 6-month drug that works great. I was excited because my office, which is a research center also, we did the very first study giving Lenacapavir in an FDA phase 1B trial, which is generally a pharmacokinetic study.
Right here in Houston.
In Houston. We did the first pharmacokinetic study.
Amazing.
So this wasn't to treat people, but it was given to people newly infected as a one-time injection. There were 4 different doses and a placebo, and so people would come in who were newly infected. We'd give them one of the injections that they were randomized to, 4 doses of Lenacapavir and a placebo, and then we followed blood tests every day with viral loads, and then on day 10 they would come in and we started Biktarvy as their official treatment regimen. So this wasn't treating anyone, we were just looking at how long did this drug stay in the system of someone with HIV. And I'm excited about what's happening now because I personally gave the very first injection to a human in the world. Never realized that this was going to lead so many years later to this amazing drug for treatment and for PrEP, possibly even getting into some of the cure arms later on. We won't talk about that now. But Lenacapavir is a fabulous drug. Now, Lenacapavir, what it does, it's a little different than other antiviral drugs. You know, other antiviral drugs, they kind of block the RNA from making DNA when the virus infects the host cell. It blocks that path of making the DNA, or blocks the little strands of DNA from integrating into the human double-stranded DNA. This drug, Lenacapavir, actually blocks the capsid. That capsid I mentioned that it covers the single-stranded RNA, that capsid has to disappear for the single-stranded RNA to make double-stranded DNA to infect the human cell, which causes the whole infection problem. And then when the virus, if it's going to make itself in a human cell, it needs to make the capsid before it becomes a virus to leave the cell. So capsid is important in 2 places. You need to break it down initially, and then you need to make capsid for a new virus that's going to go out into the rest of the body. So this Lenacapavir blocks that. It's really interesting because the chemist who made this molecule, it took him 10 years to make this molecule. He was a chemist that went to Northwestern in Chicago for chemistry. I went to Northwestern Medical School.
Nice.
So we sat one night at the very beginning of the very first research study, and we spent 3 hours talking. I've got a chemistry and a biochemistry major, and I can follow Winston for about 10 seconds before he's off in another world. And so we're about to start the very first study that's pharmacokinetic, an FDA 1B study. And I finally asked him, I said, Winston, I didn't follow anything you're saying. I don't know what you told me. Tell me very quickly, easily, break it down, really simple. How does this drug work? He looked at me and he said, Gordon, I don't know.
Jeez.
I said, I'm about to give your injection to my patients, and you don't know how this drug works.
How this is going to happen.
No, but he said, it does work. do it, you'll see, you'll
Yeah.
love it. And so I gave the very first injection, we did the very first study on
Wow.
pharmacokinetic, which was really cool because this time we were looking to see how long this drug was going to work. Winston told me, he said, this drug might work for a month. That would be really cool. If it
Yeah.
works for a month in a human with HIV, how great would that be?
And this is the Lenacapavir.
This is Lenacapavir.
Yeah.
So we gave the injections of Lenacapavir, and then we put them in Biktarvy to treat their infection. These were just injections, one injection of various doses of Lenacapavir.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a month later, there's blood level. 2 months, blood level. 3 months, blood level. 6 months, there's blood level. At some of the doses, 12 months later, we could still find drug in the blood.
Wow, a year later.
A year later.
Wow.
Not necessarily high enough to treat,
Sure.
but this drug worked for 6 months. Now, that was really cool for Gilead to get a drug that worked for 6 months, but there's nothing else to partner with it. So to treat people, you have to partner with another drug, and that's where we've had some difficulty. Plus, it's an expensive drug, which will be a factor in PrEP. This drug is $40,000 a year for 2 shots.
Whew.
Yeah.
Who's fitting that bill?
Insurance companies,
Wow.
they argue, they complain,
Right.
they don't want to do it. You know, they want you to go on some generic drug that's been around for 20 years that may not work as well, but it doesn't cost much.
Right.
So now we get into PrEP. We need PrEP. Truvada was good, Descovy was good, Apretude's good, but studies were started, and the studies are the purpose studies. That's what Gilead called them. There are 5 purpose studies. 1 and 2 we now have data on, and it's amazing data. Purpose 1 was done in Africa, in women in Africa, young women in Africa, up to 25 years old, 16 to 25 years old.
And this is still
So-
on the Lenacapavir.
And this is the Lenacapavir
Yeah.
for PrEP. The Purpose
For
1
PrEP,
is
yep.
a PrEP study.
Yep.
The first research studies. You know, everyone said, hey, this is a cool drug, works for a long time, let's do PrEP research. So Purpose 1 started. It was in Africa. I wasn't involved with that study, but it's in women. So you've got pretty much 3,000 women in a double-blinded study where they were either getting the Lenacapavir injection or they were getting Truvada or Descovy. So now that PrEP is kind of standard of care, you can't have a placebo arm. Everyone has to get something. So 2-to-1 randomization to Lenacapavir, which turned out to be a little over 3,000 women that took the Lenacapavir, and then the other 1/3 either took Truvada or Descovy, so we could collect some data on that in the women there also. Because early data for women on Truvada and Descovy wasn't as good as we wanted it. And if you look at women do get infected with HIV. 19% of new HIV infections are women, and only 8% of women know anything about PrEP or take PrEP. So we need the data on women. That was done in Purpose 1 in Africa. And the results came out about 3 months ago, and it shocked the world.
What did it reveal?
3,000 women, 100% successful in preventing transmission in Africa, where these young girls are highly sexually active. Very often the male doesn't want to use a condom. They don't know they have HIV. These are high-risk women, and we have 100% success in preventing transmission.
Wow.
You don't see 100% in medicine.
Yeah,
I've
that's
been practicing
groundbreaking.
a long time. You don't see 100% anything.
Wow.
This is 100% effective in women where the previous PrEPs didn't work very well.
Yeah.
Now, in the 1/3, now 3,000 got the shots, a little over 3,000. In the other women that got either Truvada or Descovy, in Descovy there were 36 infections, I believe. In the Truvada arm, there were, I think, 12 or 14. So we're getting transmission from the Truvada and the Descovy. These are the acceptable PrEPs that are out there. But most of the biggest reason for those infections were not the drug didn't work, they weren't taking it.
Oh,
They
I
weren't
see.
taking the pill.
Right.
So most of those women, 30-some on the Descovy, they weren't taking their Descovy. And they were monitoring blood levels. You can do skin testing, you can do blood testing. They weren't taking their drugs.
Yeah. I would assume that it'd be easier for folks to adhere to their drugs if it was an injectable form of the drug versus having to take a pill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we did that study on injectant. We know how long it works. So if you give one injection, it's working for 6 months.
Yeah.
You don't have to rely on anyone doing anything other than going about their life. They've got blood levels that work for at least 6 months. So these are amazing results that got worldwide attention. And then everyone said, okay, the Purpose 2 study is ongoing. Also, Purpose 2 is partly in the U.S. and a couple of many other countries, but the Purpose 2 is on men and transgender men and women. So now we're getting some transgender data
Here in the U.S.
in the U.S.
Yep.
My office was one of the higher enrollers on that study.
Nice.
We love PrEP studies. Our office has traditionally been very, very high. One of my nurse practitioners has been number 2 in the United States for prescribing PrEP 7 years ago. So we've done a lot of work with PrEP. So this was exciting to have an injection. We hoped it was going to work because it was really exciting. Blood levels for 6 months.
Nice.
And 100% successful. So the men's data was just published for the first time. It was presented at an infectious disease conference late, I think it was the last week of November. And I was an author of that abstract, so I actually knew the results before I could tell anyone about
November of this past year.
it. This past year,
Okay.
just this past November.
Wow.
The Purpose 2 study on men and transgender men and women was released. And then the week before Christmas, it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, when you talk about a drug that you want to get the FDA to approve, that now in women has already shown 100% successful, and actually the FDA stopped that study because they knew the results. It was double-blinded, so the researchers didn't know.
Yeah.
The FDA did and said, you're going to stop this study. This is amazing. This is amazing. Report the data now. And so the data on men was published in an infectious disease conference and then published in the New England Journal of Medicine. 2,179 men. There were 2 infections of HIV. But that incidence takes it way, way down to almost 100% successful. And we don't have answers yet what happened with those 2 men. I'm going to get a lot more information in a couple of weeks, so I'll explain that in a minute. But we don't know. They had blood levels that were effective and should have blocked transmission, but that's 2,179, and there were 2
Versus
transmission.
2. Yeah.
So that gives you a success rate of preventing transmission of 99.9%.
Yeah, and the people who sign up for these studies, they know the risks that comes with the potential of possibly contracting HIV.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will personally thank everyone in the study, every one of our patients that got in. You need to realize you're creating amazing results by being part of this research study with Lenacapavir for PrEP. They couldn't. We couldn't do placebos in the Purpose 1 or the Purpose 2 study because PrEP is a standard of care. It is recommended, and we have drugs that can be used for PrEP, not as effective as Lenacapavir. Now we're finding that out.
Yeah.
And even in our study in men, in the Truvada arm, 1/3 of people enrolled got Truvada, and then a little over 3,000 got the Lenacapavir, almost 3,000. There were 9 cases of HIV transmitted in the Truvada arm of the study. But again, we know from blood levels, the people that got the HIV didn't have blood levels of Truvada. They weren't taking their pill. So that's been one of the biggest problems with PrEP is finding something that people could maintain blood level without having to take a pill every day or an injection every 2 months.
Gotcha.
So we've got this amazing data in men, amazing data in women, and it was published. I'm an author of that article in the New England Journal of Medicine. For the FDA to get, and I know the FDA wants to approve this drug. They love this drug. That's why they stopped the study. And the Purpose 2 study, our study in the U.S., they actually wanted to stop that quicker and said, okay, we want data now, get us some data immediately. And so we were, as researchers, we were getting reports from Gilead, okay, get your data ready, we need this data soon on every patient you've got in the study so far, and then that's what was published. But to get a drug approved by the FDA, you have to have a manuscript in a very respectable journal that's highly peer-reviewed. They want people peer-reviewing the article before it's even published to make sure that a lot of people out there think this is a really good article, it's correct. And as an author on that article, we presented it to the New England Journal of Medicine, and they'd send it back. Okay, we have these questions, these comments from our peer review docs. Change this, and we corrected it again and again and again. Again, finally, it was accepted and published right before Christmas.
Nice.
So now we've got the published data of a almost 100% successful PrEP study.
And so when can we expect to see that 6-month injectable PrEP available to people who are HIV negative?
Oh, very good question. First of all, we needed the manuscript in the New England Journal of Medicine. That was there. And really, really fascinating, and I love what happened next, is the last week of December, Science Magazine came out. Cover of Science Magazine, 2024 Breakthrough of the Year, Scientific Breakthrough of the Year.
And there's a lot of scientific research going on.
Yes, there is.
Wow.
Lenacapavir, 100% successful in preventing transmission of HIV. Breakthrough of the year.
Wow.
So now we've got the article that the FDA requires, and so Gilead immediately put the application into the FDA to get it approved for PrEP use. Now, it's already approved for treating people with HIV, but it's not approved for PrEP, so we can't use it for PrEP until it's approved by the FDA. And I just found out in the last week, I knew I was coming here, and I was so excited when I saw that the FDA has accepted the application, and it's now in a rapid process to get approval, and the anticipated date for approval is June 19th.
Wow, June of this year, we can see Lenacapavir accessible to people for PrEP.
Yes.
6 months protection.
Yes.
That is pretty groundbreaking stuff right there.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, we now have effective treatment for people with HIV so they can live a normal life. We prevent people with HIV from transmitting it. Now we can 100% prevent transmission of HIV.
Wow, game changer.
To anyone. This is a game changer. Now, problems, Lenacapavir is such a nice drug, amazing drug. It doesn't have a lot of side effects. The major side effect is a little irritation at the site of the injection.
And where is the injection site?
Subcutaneous injection, we use the abdomen.
The abdomen,
sites.
okay.
But it's subcutaneous. It's not intramuscular like Apretude.
Sure.
Subcutaneous.
Sure.
And so it's pretty easy to give, but if it's not given correctly, we've been, I've got nurse specialists that are teaching people how to give injections and IV solutions and things. And we've got our own method where we use ice ahead of time. We inject it deep enough into the subcutaneous area that's not close to the surface of the skin. So we're getting lower incidence of reactions, but that's the major reaction. It's not kidney toxic, it's not liver toxic, it doesn't affect your bone marrow like Truvada did to some people.
A little softer on the system overall.
It's a very safe drug. So I have a nonprofit that works in Mexico. I did the very first HIV test ever held in a Mayan community. Personally did that, so I'm really, really proud of that. But when you get out to the Mayan villages, they have PrEP that's difficult to get, but it's basically Truvada and a little of Descovy. It's hard to get, and these particularly the young boys in a Mayan village, they're at risk, but mom and dad don't know they're even gay and at risk for HIV, and they don't want that discussion to occur. So they run to the big centers, Merida, Yucatan, to have sex on a weekend and come home. They don't want a pill that they have to take every day, because I guarantee you those Mayan mothers will find that bottle, and they're now smart enough to say, someone take this to a computer and tell me what it is.
Figure out what it is.
Wow. It's a drug to treat AIDS. Truvada and Descovy, it treats AIDS. okay, it leads to a discussion these kids don't want.
Yeah.
And that's true of many places around the world because of the continued stigma and discrimination that exists. But now, I'm thinking we can go into a Mayan village, this is down the line, and give a shot of Lenacapavir to those who want to come out and say, I'm at risk. We give them a shot. I don't need blood tests for 6 months. I don't need to do an HIV test like we need to do on Truvada and Descovy, because people still get HIV on Truvada and Descovy because they're not taking the meds. Well, I give a shot, you get blood level. It's working. It's 100% successful. Come back in 6 months and give another shot. I don't need kidney tests. I don't need liver tests. I don't need anything other than give the shot. So there are lots of groups of people that we can now target. Those drug addicted communities that can't take a pill every day, give them a shot. And that's going to be actually purpose 4. So we've got purpose 1, purpose 2, purpose 3 will get started sometime not too far away. That's going to be transgenders.
Got it.
Transgenders, 66 times more likely to get infected than the regular population. Let's target the transgender community. And thank you, Gilead, for reaching out to the different diverse groups that are at high risk. And even with the Purpose 2 study, they really were on our backs to get enough young people in the study. The average age was 29. A good number were 16 to 25. Average age was 29. We need to target the youth that are coming out that really don't remember anything about HIV infections, how bad it was, how terrible it was, and they don't really know what PrEP is. We need to get the youth. We need to get the black community, the young black community. We need to get the transgender community. And you're dealing with all kinds of different stigmas and discrimination when you're trying to target those people. But we need to target those people.
And when we talk about the the access front of things, in October, federal agencies issued new guidance clarifying that most health plans must cover certain HIV prevention medications, including long-acting injectable PrEP, without cost sharing. Could that guidance be changed under the new administration?
Yeah. Congress approved the bill, not this session, but the last session, 23-24. That basically that bill very, very strongly worded, and it said this bill requires private health insurance plans to cover prescription drugs that prevent HIV. Requires the insurance plans cover, including related screenings, diagnostic procedures, administrative fees, and clinical follow-ups without any cost sharing obligation to the plan holder. That was the bill in Congress.
In October.
In October. Now that's in place now. Insurance companies don't always follow it. We still have problems. People with their PrEP still get denied. They want, you can't use Descovy because that still costs a lot of money. You can use Truvada because that you can get through GoodRx.com for $19 a month.
Cheaper.
So Truvada is very cheap. Truvada used to be $1,500 a month. It's now $19 a month to get the generic form. Works just as well. So insurance doesn't want to pay for this drug. You have to take that one. But there are reasons why you maybe can't take Truvada. Maybe you're having a little kidney problem or a bone density problem. So we have to write a letter to say, this patient can't take, he needs Descovy. Or we now get into the Apretude. Okay, that's a more expensive injection. Costs more than the Descovy a little bit. It's every 2 months. We now have to write letters saying why they can't take Truvada, they can't take Descovy. It has to be an every 2-month injection, and here's Apretude. So we still have to fight with the insurance companies to get it covered. But Congress says it is 100% covered. Doesn't always work. And when you get into self-insured companies, that's a real foggy area. With self-insured, if they're really going to cover it or not. You never quite know. Now, is that going to change? We have new political people in power who have already changed how the world is going to be treated for HIV infections, and the people in the world in underfinanced countries, how they're getting PrEP and how it's being paid for. That is already being cut off. So immediately, a good part of the world is losing treatment, increases the number of people that will have viral activity to transmit to other people, and people who want to be on PrEP can't get on PrEP because it's not being covered under programs that are recently canceled. Is Congress going to change the fact that it's 100% covered in the U.S.? I'm not even going to guess what our government's going to do now.
Yeah,
I would
it's
guess
just a wait and see game.
It's a wait and see. I guess there will be some changes.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: for people who can't afford access to PrEP, they don't know what sort of resources may be available out there. What resources or programs are available for people who want access to PrEP but maybe can't necessarily afford it?
Gilead has some programs that will help pay for the drug. If you don't have any insurance, you can get coupons that will help pay for it. Currently, the insurance companies, including Medicare and Medicaid, do cover it, so we haven't had any trouble with them for the most part. ADAP, which is the state program that covers paying for drugs to treat HIV infection, recently has said that they will pay for PrEP. But they need to continue to get the money to do that.
Right.
And at this point, it's so amazing. It's fantastic. It's amazing. We can 100% prevent transmission of HIV to the world.
Yeah.
If
with
we
all the
can
resources.
get the world on PrEP.
Yeah.
And the biggest barrier that will occur, there are a lot of unknown things. We don't know if we start using Lenacapavir for PrEP, are we going to increase the risk of resistance developing, where 5 years from now it won't work as well and we need something new? Don't know. Those are unknown areas.
Yeah.
But the biggest barrier is finances. When you hear that if you're on Lenacapavir for your HIV infection, it's $40,000 a year. I'm sure everyone out there is going to just open their pockets and pay $40,000 a year for 2 shots for PrEP so they don't get HIV. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So there are programs being put in place for the world. And Gilead has learned a lot from some of the arguments and discussions and criticism with Truvada and Descovy for PrEP and how it was developed and used with some side effects and hard to take. Gilead is already working with 7 companies, some are new companies worldwide, to make generic form of Lenacapavir. Now, this molecule, already, before it's even been approved here.
Right.
And Gilead has done that with every drug that they've had approved. They would give the formula to usually one of the India generic companies that will make the drug, and they will go periodically to make sure they're making it correctly. And that has been very nice to do that. But Lenacapavir is this amazing new drug that took Winston, the chemist, 10 years to make, and it is the first drug in that class. It's now 6 years since it was first used. There is no other capsid inhibitor out there. No one else is making a capsid inhibitor that's going to work like this.
Wow.
It's just not being done. So these generic companies that Gilead is putting in place for poor, underfinanced countries will probably bring the yearly cost of Lenacapavir, just a guess from talking with their scientists in the past, it might come down to $95 a year for these generic companies.
Yeah.
Are those drugs going to be easily accessible in the U.S.?
Wait and see.
Wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always difficult. In the last 5 years or so, we've been able to access generic drugs that aren't yet approved in the U.S. in various ways that have worked fairly well. Truvada in a generic form you can get for $6. Great Britain has been getting it for $6 to use there. In a generic form, we're now able to get it, but it's still a little bit difficult. And I don't see where we're going to get generic drugs quickly. So things are going to happen, and this is where I would like help from everyone out there.
Yeah.
I can't see you, but if you're there, raise your hand and come give us some help. Our office has started a new nonprofit that's not quite officially tax exempt, but will be soon, called Opticare.
Okay.
So I want to use Opticare, and I've talked to Gilead about taking some of our really high-risk communities in Houston that are underfinanced, can't afford this drug, don't have insurance, and let's work with a nonprofit that might get the drug a lot cheaper from Gilead and paid for by nonprofit money, and start targeting the underserved community that otherwise can't take PrEP.
Nice.
And one of the big issues with Gilead is that they knew that this drug would be very effective for these high-risk target communities that can't get PrEP anyway, because they won't take it, they can't afford it, they're a drug user, whatever the reason they can't take it. We need to show, Gilead needs to show that these communities are going to do well with this drug.
If they have access to it.
They have access to it.
Yeah.
So we'd like to, in some way, there's nothing set up yet, and I would like help from everyone else in the community.
Yeah.
You know, how can we break that barrier of finances that's going to keep people from getting 100% protected from getting HIV infection?
And speaking of people in the community, we do have some people who are joining us on the live stream here. We have some viewer questions from the community. Someone is asking, how soon after getting the injection does it start protecting me from HIV?
The first injection, initially Lenacapavir was approved as an injection. I gave the very first injection because they did not have an oral form that they could make. And talking to Winston, he said, I can't get an oral form to work. The injection works, but it's an intramuscular injection. Well, they now have an oral form. It's not the oral form. The pill is not going to work for 6 months, but it can work for a long time, weeks.
Yeah.
We don't actually know exactly how long. But now we've learned also that if you give the injection of Lenacapavir, you're at a little risk of infection for the first few days until you get a high enough blood level to protect you. So anyone starting on Lenacapavir, and when it's approved by the FDA, will probably take 2 days of the oral pills, maybe 2 300 milligram doses day one, day two, and day one is the injection, and then you've got a blood level from the oral drug, and then the Lenacapavir works. And that's probably the way it would be given. And it's going to be beneficial within days. I mean, Truvada, a lot of people are familiar with the 2-1-1 PrEP way to take Truvada, 2 pills 24 hours before sexual activity, and then 1 pill a day for 2 days after sexual activity. And that's 90% effective, maybe not quite as high as taking the pill every day, but it's pretty effective. So that's telling me Truvada works in 2 days. You know, it's not that month that we thought initially, or then the week came out, or the 10 days, or so many days for women if it's vaginal exposure versus rectal exposure or oral. No, it works pretty quickly. So this drug, within the first week, is going to be effective.
So
and it lasts for 6 months.
So within the first week of someone taking Lenacapavir, they'll be able to have protection.
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome. We have another question. Someone asked, if I experience side effects, can I stop after 1 injection, or am I committed for a certain period?
Very interesting question, because this is one of the problems that we had with Cabenuva for treatment and Apretude for PrEP, is that's a pretty long-acting drug. It's not 6 months, but it's a long-acting drug. So if you give a dose of Cabenuva and then someone stops taking their HIV meds, you get this tail. So past Cabenuva or Apretude is good for really 3 months. You could, and that's why if you're at the every 2-month injection, if you're a little late, you're off in China someplace doing something, and you don't come back for 3 weeks, you can still get your dose up to 3 months. It's still going to work. You're still protected. But then after 3 months, Apretude or Cabenuva for treating infection start to fall off, and you have this long tail where the drug is not in the range of therapeutic range, but it's dropping lower and lower where it may not protect you. But when it gets lower, it even worse than not protecting you or not treating you is it could drive resistance to develop. We don't want that
We don't
to
want the
happen.
resistance,
So
yeah.
this is, with treatment, we need to make sure if we're treating someone, they want to come off their injection for whatever reason. I don't like the shots. I'm traveling too much. I can't do it. Okay, we're going to put you back on pills. You go back on pills so that during that tail of the Cabenuva falling off, you're covered with another antiviral regimen. This needs to be dealt with, and I'll get more information pretty soon. But with PrEP, we're going to have a tail. This is a long-acting drug. I know in the first studies that we did with this drug, when we were monitoring the drug, we went out to a year. And some of those doses of lenacapavir, we could still find levels of lenacapavir in blood 12 months later.
Wow.
Not enough to treat, not enough to protect with
yeah.
PrEP. So we've got this tail we have to worry about.
But
and
the
that's-
6 month on the 6 month front, it's been proven to be effective.
It's effective at 6 months.
Yeah.
Probably effective at 8 months. So you get a little time frame there.
Gotcha.
But it's not going to be effective at 12 months. You get this tail, which then could lead to infections, and infections with people who have HIV infection. And lenacapavir is being used more and more for treating HIV. And the longer it's being treated, the more we're going to get some mutations starting to pop up in the HIV infection community that then might make you more likely to get infected with that tail. You're getting more likely to get infected with a virus that has some resistance to lenacapavir.
I got you.
So we need to do something to prevent that tail from leading to infections occurring.
But the main takeaway here is consistency and adherence are what's going to change the game for anyone that's on these drugs.
And you can use multiple PrEPs. And if you're on lenacapavir and you've done fine for 2 years now, you've got a couple of shots, it's great.
Yeah.
The injection site's not a big problem. And now you're going to be doing some work in China for 6 months. Take Truvada.
Yeah.
So you just stop your lenacapavir, go on Truvada, go on Descovy, and then a year later you come back. Okay, restart your lenacapavir.
Yeah, we got another question in from someone in the community. They're asking, if I miss my injection appointment, how much time do I have before I'm unprotected?
We know it works. It'll be with the dose they're using right now, it'll be effective for at least 8 months, maybe 9 months. And that data really wasn't collected with treatment, but will need to be looked at, and people on the studies now are going to get long-term blood levels to see. We're still doing Purpose 2, and everyone that was on the placebo or the Truvada arm is now getting the injections, and as they stop and maybe go to a different PrEP, we're going to continue to draw blood levels to see how long it's going to be in the therapeutic range to prevent getting HIV. And that can be different than the therapeutic range to treat HIV. We really don't know what drug level we need in the blood, because we've never done this before, to protect you still as that tail starts falling. We may know that this is the range to treat HIV, and if lenacapavir is coming down, as long as it's in those two lines, you're fine. But then it drops below this one. Oh, that's not going to keep your HIV controlled. But that can be totally different with PrEP. We don't know how much drug you really need for PrEP.
Gotcha. I want to make sure we don't have any more questions from the community out there. No other questions? Dr. Crowfoot, did you have anything else that you wanted to hit
a
home?
lot.
Of course, we could talk for hours, right?
I was going to tell you that I've been collecting the data for this talk today for 50 years.
Wow.
And I've got a lot to talk about.
I bet you do. I mean, this is really groundbreaking stuff. I mean, it's like we said, it's really changing the game for not just gay people, but straight people, transgender people,
everyone.
Anyone out there who could be directly impacted by HIV. This is really, changing things for them. So this is great research. And to know that a lot of this research is happening right here in our own backyard at your clinic is pretty astounding as well. You got to be very proud of that.
I'm very proud. That's basically a single doctor research center that we are one of the top viral research centers in the world, certainly for HIV. We're up at the very top in the world, and we're doing studies that are amazing, like this PrEP study. We've given my research center has done first dosing of a drug to humans on 5 drugs that are now approved.
Wow.
You know, Biktarvy is the #1 drug to treat HIV now, and I'm really happy to say that Biktarvy was given to the first human in the world in my room 3 in my office, and in room 1, the second person 2 minutes later.
And real quick, for people who don't know, where's your office located?
We're at Kirby in the Southwest Freeway, 3701 Kirby Drive. We have the 12th floor, Baylor's on the lower floors.
Got it.
But Baylor is there also.
Got it. And we will have that information for you on our website. We want to thank you again, Dr. Crowfoot, for joining us this morning. You have been a wealth of knowledge, and your expertise has just been appreciated on so many different fronts, especially for people at home. And we want to thank you guys at home for joining us on KHOU 11
Yes,
Plus.
thank you to everyone. And let's get this drug out to the community and stop HIV.
Yeah, and before we go, we've got a lot of original content ready for you, including more discussions just like the one we just had here. Be sure to watch those for free right here on KHOU 11 Plus. I'm Devon Roming, and we'll see you next time.